After having just seen the first season of Severance, I have a lot of thoughts about it. I really enjoyed the show as it's an incredibly unique premise that is explored thoroughly with a compelling plot, characters, and themes. The main theme I'll focus on today is the theme of overreach and the cult-like nature of capitalism and corporate control. Capitalism, as defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decision, and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in a free market. Severance explores capitalism through the lens of corporate workers whose lives are severed surgically into two. Their work selves and personal selves have separate memories and cannot access or communicate with one another. The inner work self, or the innie, as noted by the show's slang, is condemned to be at work all the time. Their entire livelihoods are inside the office. Meanwhile, the outie, or the outer self, is the original core person and identity that lives outside of Lumen Industries. The concept alone is dystopian and ethically questionable. Condemning a part of your consciousness, essentially another person, to work their entire lives feels like a form of slavery, which is aptly noted as pseudo-slavery by the Villains Wiki. Furthermore, the way that Lumen Industries behaves towards its own severed workers is ethically reprehensible. First off, the employees work mundane yet mysterious jobs, like sorting encrypted files by clicking scary numbers, or printing out cryptic paintings that portray workers slaughtering each other. The severed workers, or the innies, have no idea what they are working on. They are completely clueless as to the work they put in and the product that is produced and sent outside of Lumen. In Karl Marx's Estrangement of Labor, he expands upon this idea, the fact that workers and laborers are estranged from their labor, that there is an inherent detachment between the effort and labor put in by the worker and the end final product and the fulfillment that comes with their labor. This detachment and estrangement ultimately makes the worker and laborer feel estranged and detached from themselves. This is because so much of our personal identities are tied into our work. On first dates, it's usually the first or second question asked because in our workaholic, capitalistic culture, professions define us. We're judged by our labor, whether we like it or not. Doctors, scientists, lawyers, politicians, programmers, and those of the upper echelon of society are valued more and seen as more attractive than minimum wage, menial, or physical laborers, despite both classes working hard in their own respective right. Our society would not be able to function without the minimum wage, menial, and physical laborers, or those deemed as low-skilled workers. Your 3 a.m. breakfast at Denny's wouldn't get made. Your morning coffee at Starbucks wouldn't be blended. Your commodities like clothes, furniture, and electronics wouldn't be sold to you. Your groceries wouldn't be hand-picked by the bushel in 100-degree heat in the middle of summer. In spite of the necessity of these professions, these are deemed low skill, and thus those who work there have their identities challenged by societal scorn. In a similar vein, the severed workers in Severance experience societal and political scorn, as the severance procedure is a controversial political issue. Pro-severance politicians and corporate oligarchs are in it for the profit and elusiveness of novel biotechnology, while the anti-severance advocates preach for the rights of severed workers. However, those who willingly undergo the severance procedure, like Mark Scout, are scorned, ostracized, and discriminated against. The general populace sneers down on severed workers despite the procedure being completely voluntary. While that doesn't take away from the unethical nature of the severance procedure, it still shows that workers and laborers are scrutinized for their labor, even if they give their explicit consent. Inside Lumen Industries, the severed workers are monitored and controlled at all times. There is no privacy, there is no freedom, and there is no chance of escape. There is only endless pseudo-slave labor with menial corporate perks like waffle parties, erotic dances, and Chinese finger traps. The severed workers are barred from forming romantic relationships with one another, which is another level of control that Lumen has over the indentured servants that are the innies. Despite this, the severed workers form romantic bonds due to the innate human need for connection, affection, and love. These romances are the sole piece of solace that the severed workers have, the only form of hope and love they can receive. They are also barred from seeing their families and told to forget about them. It's an incredibly depressing, drab life to live as a severed inner worker. Moreover, when the workers are disobedient, they are subjected to a form of psychological torture known as the break room. In the break room, the worker is expected to recite a forlorn apology to Kier and the company indefinitely, until it is deemed that the apology is sincere. This can last minutes, hours, or even days, mentally breaking the workers down into tears as they are forced to continually recite the same dialogue about being sorry to Kier until Mr. Milchik, the security guard and enforcer of Lumen, deems they are sincere. Additionally, Lumen forms a cult of personality around Keir Egan, the founder of Lumen, and a religious cult around him too. They say thank Keir for X, Y, and Z rather than thank God. They sing songs to Keir, pray to Keir, and devote their livelihoods to Keir. Hell, even the town is named after Keir. The workers are expected to follow this cult and believe in the cult, and they really have no other option. Most of the mental stimuli in the workplace centers around numbers, paintings, and Keir. Their entire lives are Keir and Lumen. How does this all relate to the cult of capitalism? Well, in the grand scheme of things, Lumen is an exaggerated, hyperbolic example of what could happen in a dystopian, unregulated capitalist society. However, the show draws many parallels to the modern world and the current cult-like nature of capitalism and corporate control. For instance, companies that claim they are a quote family are notorious for being controlling, abusive, and unforgiving of the workers. Furthermore, workers in the office are expected to perform at a certain pace and meet quotas for menial rewards like pizza parties, pool tables, and pajama days, rather than raises that match inflation and better, more ethical working conditions. Also, corporations are increasingly becoming more and more invasive in people's lives and livelihoods. Amazon Alexas are infamous for spying on you and recording your voice even when they're supposed to be off. Microsoft is set to add the recall feature to Windows 11, where the operating system itself takes random snapshots of your screen, completely compromising people's privacy and security. Cell phones are notorious for tracking people down, especially protesters, journalists, and those deemed a threat to their native states. The increase in corporate power and control in people's lives is becoming dystopian and sickening, and it's only a matter of time before we begin our own version of the severance procedure.